Good morning. Yesterday we had the very controversial reading from Paul to the Ephesians, wives be obedient to your husbands, and husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church. And then we have the continuation today, children obey your parents. And when I reflect on that, I become more and more convinced that in our world, all of our problems, all of our woes, whether it be in the church, whether it be in culture and society, whether it be politically, in the family most especially, comes down to children being disobedient to their parents. It comes down to the kind of idea of, I hate you, Dad, you're wrong, like a petulant teenager. And we see that going all the way back to the garden, right? When God puts Adam and Eve there and he says, okay, here's everything, you've got dominion over it all, just don't eat the fruit from this one tree. That's the one thing that you're forbidden to do. And of course, the devil tempts Eve, and Eve says, well, but God told us not to eat from that tree, and the devil tempts her further and says, did he really say that? Is that really what he meant? This God who is in a place of authority, this God who is your loving Father, did he really say that? Is that really what he meant? Surely he must be wrong. And so the idea of kind of questioning authority who is God to tell me what to do? Who is God to tell me how to live my life? Authority exists for a reason. Authority is very important for us, and it has to be, of course, rightly ordered. We have authority first and foremost in the family. We have authority in the church. We have authority in the state. We have authority in work. All different aspects of life have authority. And how do we approach authority? Do we approach it with some sort of fear? Do we approach it with some sort of distrust? Do we approach it with some sort of apprehension? Certainly we can look and see where authority has been abused, right? We can look in the church and see where authority has been abused. We can certainly look in government and see where authority has been abused. And we can look in families and see where the authority has been abused. But that doesn't make authority bad. That doesn't give us license for disobedience. That doesn't give us license to say, well, I'm going to figure out how to do it on my own because I hate you, Dad. No, rather we have to say, okay, well, what does proper authority look like? And how can I order my life to be subordinate to that authority? Obviously, God is the highest authority. And so we have to first start by looking at our own lives and saying, do I really subordinate myself to God? Do I subordinate myself to his authority? Do I trust in him? Or like Lucifer, am I my own authority? Am I the one that makes all the decisions? Am I the one who says, it's my way? And for those of us who are in authority, whether it's as a pastor, whether it's as a parent, whether it's as a husband and father, whether it's as someone who has authority in your work, we have to ask ourselves, is my authority subordinated to God's? Is my authority in line with doing the will of God? Not just for me, but for those around me, for those who are under me, for those who I have authority over. Paul goes on, he says, slaves, be obedient to your human masters with fear and trembling and sincerity of heart as to Christ. Not only when being watched, as currying favor, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, willingly serving the Lord and not men, knowing that each will be requited from the Lord for whatever good he does, whether he is slave or free. Now, of course, we don't like to talk about being slaves because that was outlawed in this country, and it's a practice that is viewed as reprehensible today. But in the time of St. Paul writing this, slavery was just kind of a fact of life, and there were many who were considered to be natural slaves. That is, those who couldn't care for themselves, those who couldn't order their own lives, those who couldn't belong in society without great assistance. And so the natural slave is one who is subordinated to his master. And really we've kind of seen it continued throughout all of history. with serfs, with masters, with like even into the industrial age, people that couldn't take care of themselves, and then today we see authority is kind of disappeared in many people's lives. We have a great homeless problem, but the homeless problem is also a great mental illness problem. It's also a great drug problem. I'm going to get controversial here. We used to have insane asylums where people were put because someone in authority said, these people cannot take care of themselves. They're a harm to themselves and they're a harm to society. And so, for the sake of protecting the individual and society, we're going to institutionalize them. We talk about that today, and we say, well, that's horrible because we're free to do whatever we want, and how dare you think about institutionalizing somebody? And of course, there were great abuses, that were committed in the mental institutions as well. But today we live in a time in which we value freedom, but don't really understand what freedom is. See, freedom is just the ability to do what I want, when I want to do it, however I want to do it, without recourse to any authority, without recourse to any other person. And so St. Paul is saying, look, whether you're enslaved or not, do the right thing. Whether you're enslaved to sin, whether you're enslaved literally, whether you're enslaved to some mental condition, whether you're enslaved to work, whether you're enslaved to whatever situation in life, be free. It doesn't matter whether the authority above you is good or not. It doesn't give you permission to live a life of vice. It doesn't give you permission to be vicious. Rather, you're called to be obedient to God first and foremost. And in whatever situation in life you find yourself in, whether it's a bad situation at work, whether it's a bad situation in your family, to really truly be free. Don't allow bad situations to be an opportunity for you to say, well, I got dealt a bad hand, so therefore that gives me permission and license to do whatever I want and to treat others however I want. But rather, Paul is calling us to something better. He says, look, even if nobody's watching, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Be good. And all of that ultimately comes down to us as children of the Father in heaven being subordinate, being obedient to Him, to respecting the natural law, to respecting the divine law, to hearing His word and saying, yes, I will follow you, I will serve you. Not like Lucifer did, saying, I will not serve, but rather as humble children. Christ tells us again and again and again, to enter into the kingdom of heaven, you must be like a child. You must be innocent. You must be trusting. You must be confident that your Father in heaven loves you and knows what He's doing and has a plan for you. And just don't get in the way of it. Don't try to fix it yourself. Don't try to do something that you don't know how to do. Just trust that God knows what He's doing. Trust that God has a plan. Trust that God loves us. Trust that at this point in the world, right now, when we look around us and we say, what a crazy time where the country's divided kind of like 50-50, and we say, what's going on? I've got to do something. I've got to fix it. I've got to put it back the way it needs to be. Just trust that the Lord has a plan. Be obedient to Him as children. Honor Him. Trust Him. Love Him. I think that's the most important thing that we can do right now, is to set aside our pride, set aside our intellect, and say, how can I just trust God more? Even when it seems like everything's going to hell, how can I trust God more? Let us ask that we may continue to be nourished with His grace through His body and blood, that we may be able to trust Him more and more like children.